Well, hi YouTubers, hi, I'm back with the 6 months 60 books, and yeah, I'm so behind. I hope I'm rushing, but I'm not rushing, I'm doing 2 today. So, now, first of all, I need to apologise to Rachel Hore for a week in Paris, because this was one I did of books that I wasn't going to read, and I put this in a charity shop bag, and then I was walking past it, pulled it out and checked my mind, I'm so glad I did, so massive apologies. I first assumed it was a reincarnation story, and but I didn't read the blurb on the back. Here we go. September 1937, Kitty Travers enrolls at the conservatory on the banks of the Seine to pursue her dream of becoming a concert pianist. But then war breaks out and the City of Lights falls into shadow. 25 years later, Faye Knox, a talented young violinist, visits Paris on a tour with her orchestra. She barely knows the city, so why does it feel so familiar? She touches of memory, becomes something stronger, and she realises her connection with the streets run deeper than she expected. Essentially, Faye is a daughter of Kitty, and this is a book primarily set during the Second World War, during the French occupation. And first of all, just point out the cover. Absolutely love the cover, okay? Because obviously it's got the Notre Dame de Paris, which sadly has a little incident with that fire last month and needs some extensive work. This book is just I'll start at the very beginning. This book just got me from the first sentence. I was reading this book, watching Notre Dame burn down, okay? March 1956, Paris. Notre Dame is French for what? Our Lady, that's right, Evelyn. A masterpiece of Gothic architecture and the heart and soul of Paris for centuries. The cathedral was built on the site of, but Faye was hardly listening. Straight away, we're in Paris. But straight away, it's a midpoint, because it starts in 1940s, 1960s, 1950s. It's like a little prequel, well, midquel, if you will, to the actual main event. So this is a book about Kitty Travers, who goes to Paris, meets Eugene, her husband, and then leaves it too late to escape when the Nazis occupy. This book is just astounding. Just the way that Rachel Hoy just kind of builds these characters and builds this world of Paris, this world which no longer exists. This bit here, this is back in 1961, okay? This is when Faye is in Paris trying to find her mother's roots, okay? Faye found this church of St. Cecilia almost by accident. I followed a narrow alley down one side to see where it went. When I opened out in the place de Mono, she stopped uncertain. Do you know the building that could be the convent, a white-fronted mansion attached to one end of it was shabby and desolate, with patches of plaster missing from the walls. Some of the shutters were hanging loose or missing altogether. The paved garden in front, where a gnarled old cherry tree was coming into leaf, had recently been swept, but otherwise appeared unloved. Only weeds grew in the place. Crap pots lined up against the wall. The whole place gave the appearance of being shut and abandoned. However, the wrought iron gate was unlocked, so with little hope but not much expectation, she approached the front door, pressed the bell, and waited. Now, that's the convent in ruins, but we see during the war the convent as it should be. This juxtaposition, okay, between how France was impacted by this war. Now, it became quite personal to me. I think one of the reasons I was resistant to it because, okay, I have an interest in family history, which I don't know much about it. Now, if you see this on Goodreads or Twitter, if you post it on Twitter, that's my name. It's unusual. And when I asked growing up, where does that come from? I was told France. France. We were French. Which is weird because I never felt any connection to France. And that was just confusing to me. Then, after my nan's death, and sorry, actually prior to that, when the 1901 census came out, okay, you can do that genealogy thing, the records were released. I had my great grandfather's name, William. So doing a search on him, I found another woman living in that address. His mother, Isabel, place of birth, Brazil. My family was Brazilian, which makes way more sense. And it was like, okay, why did we think we were French? Why did we think we were French? When we are Brazilian, okay? When my nan passed away, my grandfather and sister got in touch with us. Again, there was estrangement going on there, sadly. And one day we were chatting, and I said to her straight away, "Do you know anything about Isabel? Can you tell me anything about Isabel?" And this is where the story came out. My great-great-grandmother, Isabel, Brazilian, wasn't what you call Mother of the Year. And her son moved to France, got married to someone else. Yeah, my great-great-grandmother never got married to the father of her son. So it's a matriarchal surname. Then he died, and then she stayed in France, and the Nazis invaded. And she was in her 60s. She was multilingual. She spoke, obviously, Portuguese, and she spoke French and English. And she, judging by my dad's skin colour, my granddad's skin, yeah, okay, easy to figure that one out. And during the Nazi occupation of France, 100,000 civilians died, and she was one of them. She was murdered, well, executed. Her life was stolen from her by the hands of a Nazi. A friend of hers survived the war and came back and told my granddad's family this. And it was a bit of a shock, but to be honest, I've been to concentration camps, and yeah, and it's just tragic that 100 million people died in this whole occupation. So it felt quite personal reading this book as well, if you understand. So this is going back. So back to the book. Okay, just talk about how personal to me it was. The thing is, even when civilian times pre-invasion, Hitler is on, like, he's in the Mardens waiting to come into the text. This is chapter 12. This is back in the 1940s. Kitty and Jean were married in March 1938, 5 months after the first meeting, and several days after Hitler's troops marched into Austria, which actually cast something of a pout over the celebrations. Like it or not, Hitler's expansionist policies and the alarming fate of Austria were the main topics of conversation at the reception. The latest rumours was that the new French government had addressed a letter of protest to Germany only to be scorned for interfering in what the Third Reich called internal affairs. There was this belief coming in this book, okay, that France won't be touched, France won't be affected. Until it happens, page 178. The first blow for Kitty was a sight in the distance of a flag bearing a swastika flying above the Eiffel Tower. At the Place de la Concorde, she glimpsed another above the Arc de Triomphe. Meanwhile, the German war machine was already making its progress down the Champs-Élysées. There were gun carriages drawn by gleaming horses, patrols of motorcycles, well upon row of Dennis soldiers, tens of thousands of them, helmeted, Wehrmacht, their uniforms immaculate, buttons polished, marching with heavy tread to the menacing brightness of a military display. Such displays were familiar to her from Panna films at the cinema. These had been mere shadows of the real reality close up. The sheer strength of the enemy forces was overwhelming, and here they were, marching through her beloved Paris, weapons glinting under a sky of merciless blue. It was as though every wheel ground the breath out of her, every boot stamped its imprint on her spirit. This was the might of Nazi Germany. At the moment it felt unconquerable. This is the story of a woman who Kitty Travers enrolls at this conservatory, hoping to become a fantastic pianist, whose future in a way snuffed out by the Nazis because it also, excuse me, sorry, I have a cold. It also really explores how people's lives were affected post-war in a way that books don't do. This book really kind of explores mental illness post the war period. This is a book that can kind of shy away from mental illness as well, which is quite touching, really. You don't get a lot of that. A lot of stoicism going on in these war novels, but this showed a Paris which we actually never see in fiction. Viewed through the eyes of a young mother trying to keep her family safe, trying to keep herself safe during Occupy Paris, even when her husband joins the La Resistance. It kind of pales in comparison, though, to Faye's life, because these books were good, but I felt the stuff set in Paris in 1937 was way more stronger. I mean, this bit you don't often read about in fiction. Over the summer 1941, Paris became increasingly cut off from the world. Kitty and her husband were experiencing financial difficulties. Jean's salary was far from generous, and he spent the money that he inherited from his grandmother on his studies and setting up a house It worried Kitty dreadfully. It's difficult too, communicating with Jean's parents, but sometimes a letter would reach them, weeks and months after it had been written, with phrases blanked out by the censors. One of these letters, Jean learned that his father was ill. He'd been given an operation on his stomach and was ready to recover. Jean did not become overly concerned. It was an awful shock, therefore, when a telegram arrived and announced that he had died, and Jean was devastated. That kind of thing. This book really kind of builds this world where the reasons were actually so ignorant of what would happen. They basically sat there again and said, Paris won't touch us with a city of lights. The city of lights fell into darkness. The world of occupation, the world of the resistance, and above all, the story of a woman who is caught up on this world where her fate should have been so different. This is basically the story of a woman who walked the boulevard of broken dreams. So, I love Kitty. So I do recommend this book. It's a fantastic book. It really made me kind of get a feel for the sense of Paris in the 1930s. I don't think any single book has captured. And I absolutely loved it. So, apologies to Rachel Hore. I'm sorry I'm just turned down to reading this book. And sign off here. And bye now.